Today's episode of the Sandwich Series is all about the porchetta sandwich, which has been on my radar for a while, but I think I've been putting it off because this is an Italian sandwich, and Italian food by nature is so simple. The sandwich is only a few ingredients, which means they need to be perfection. They need to really be nailed down if you want this sandwich to work. So I've decided to go all in, and I am on a quest to make an incredible porchetta sandwich at home. So on today's episode, I'm on a journey to find the perfect piece of pork to really build out this porchetta roast, and I'm going to be attempting to make a bread recipe that I've never tried before that I think is just perfect for this sandwich. So I recently moved out of Brooklyn to Long Island, which means I lost all of my connections, my sources to butchers, to the markets that I made over the years, which for me is very important to have those trusting sources of food. And that's the reason why I'm on the road right now. I'm headed out east in Long Island. And when you go out east, you have two options. You can go south to the Hamptons, which most people know about, which is where all the celebrities have their mansions, or you can go north to the North Fork, which is where all the farms are, all of the wineries are up north. And I searched all over the place to find the proper cut of meat for this porchetta, because you need the skin on the pork belly. And I finally found a farm in the North Fork which raises their own pigs so they can get me that specific cut of meat. And the best part about the North Fork is once you get there, you're pretty much on one road the whole time, and every single mile is a brand new farm stand. And I am the ultimate sucker for farm stands, so this is like a heaven for me. So today, even though it's pretty rainy outside, it's just Operation Stock Up on Food. All right, this is 8 Hands Farm. Oh, sorry, a lot of people here. It's early too.
So my name is Carol Festa. My husband and I started this farm about 10 years ago now.
Okay.
We started out on some leased property in Mattatuck with a few sheep and sort of got our feet wet. And the opportunity came up to purchase this property here from the Peconic Land Trust. So we purchased it and sort of just launched ourselves into farming with really no prior experience in farming. And it's turned profitable in the last year or so, which is
amazing.
Great.
How long did it take to turn profitable?
Like 7-8 years.
Wow. Okay, so people should know if they get into farming.
Farming is tough, and really it was the value add element of our operation that allowed it to happen. Selling just eggs and raw cuts of meat really doesn't do it. You have to be able to add value along the chain to be able to turn.
And that's what you guys do. What makes this place special? It's the value add.
I think first and foremost is the fact that, my husband and I are very hands-on, so folks can come in here and talk to us and understand our operation. Our butcher, who's from France, is wonderful. He's done some amazing stuff, taking our operation to the next level.
I just got some pastrami here that look delicious.
But our pâtés are amazing. He's actually competed in world competitions in pâté making, so he's really, really talented. We have pigs, we have chickens, we have sheep, and the fundamental principle behind how we raise our animals, and I think it was sort of initiated by Joel Salatin's approach, is that you want to respect the basic instinct of the animal. Yeah. And in the end, the animal makes the ultimate sacrifice for us, for our customers. So we want to make sure that while they're here, that we give them the respect, that we allow them to express their basic instincts, whether it be a chicken scratching around in the grass, eating grasses, eating bugs in addition to their feed, whether it be a pig rooting around. Pigs love to root. So we allow the pigs to be outdoors, as opposed to how most pigs in this country are raised, in confinement, in squalor, in horrible living conditions. First and foremost, I always question these guys, okay, what are the ingredients? What are we using in this? I want to make sure that it's what I would want to eat at the end of the day. Yeah. And that's how I look out for our customers, I think.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much. I'm sure I'll be back making trips.
Sounds good.
Before I get into this pork, I want to take a minute to tell you about today's sponsor, which is Bright Cellars, which will be very relevant for tonight's meal. And I don't know what it is, if it's just not being able to go out to restaurants, or maybe it's that I just had a baby and I'm not sleeping much, but I've been drinking a lot more wine than normal. And for someone who knows a lot about fermentation, I don't know anything about picking wines, about, you know, different regions and wine pairings, which is why I love Bright Cellars. I've had this subscription for the last few months and it has been incredible to have curated wines for me. The way Bright Cellars works is that you take a quick 7-question quiz online, they gather your taste preferences, and then boom, a box of beautiful wine shows up at your door. And one of my favorite parts about the Bright Cellars experience is the education you get with each bottle of wine. They give you these education cards that tells you everything you need to know about the wine, but also, most importantly, the wine pairing, which I know nothing about. So all you have to do is take out these cards and you check the pairings and you see what pairing matches up closely to your food. So I'm gonna be going with dancing juice tonight because we have some pork enchiladas with green chili in the pairings. I thought that was pretty close to what I'm making, but of course I'll be enjoying all of these beauties in my home restaurant because that's all I'm working with these days. And Bright Cellars is giving you 50% off your first 6 bottles of wine. So check the link in the description to get started on your wine delivery today. So the traditional porchetta is a very unique dish, generally served for some type of special occasion like a holiday in Italy. And what makes it so unique is the actual cut of meat, because you have this pork belly with the skin on, but then you also have the pork loin. And the traditional cut you would get from your butcher is the pork belly attached to the pork loin, just like that. So really you can think of it as a mini pig roast because you're getting all of those same elements. The crackling, the crispiness of the skin, you get the fattiness of the pork belly, you get the leanness of the actual pork loin, and then this is all rolled up into this beautiful roast. So you really get this mini pig roast, but it's a bit unrealistic to actually get this cut of meat attached because one, it's so much meat to get for the standard home cook, which is why, of course, it's served on special occasions. And it can also just be difficult to get this cut of meat from your butcher. So I wanted to show you a technique that you'll still get the same final product, a similar final product, without getting this special cut. Plus, you know, this is a sandwich, so we're just chopping it all up at the end into delicious pork bits. So since I had a smaller piece of pork belly, I actually removed the skin first to make this roast a little more flexible for alterations. And once I removed the skin, I chopped off a nice piece just to save for later because I love me some good pork belly in the freezer for a rainy day. And the goal for a porchetta is maximum surface area so you can stuff it with flavoring. So I butterflied my pork belly open and then I ended up trimming off a good bit of fat. And I'll show you what I'll do with that fat in just a second. Now that I have this beautiful surface area, well, I gotta prepare my flavorings. So what I'm gonna use, which is pretty classic, is just a bunch of herbs. So I took some thyme and some rosemary, my heartier herbs, and a bit of parsley and some green onion, and just gave those a very fine chop. And finally, I zested up some lemon to really perk up this herb mix. Then I hit my pork with some salt and pepper and loaded up that herb mixture. And the goal of the porchetta is to have that mix between those pork cuts, between the lean, between the fatty. So I sliced up my pork loin into little steaks and coated those with salt and pepper and the herb mixture. And then I placed those on top of my pork belly so I could wrap that all up into a beautiful roast. And then the last step was to put the skin back on to really seal in all of the flavor when we're roasting the porchetta, plus get the crispiness on the outside. And unfortunately, my skin wasn't quite big enough to wrap all the way around, but it should be good enough. And I actually used the butcher twine from the original pork cut because that's all I had at that moment. And I gave the pork a nice coating of salt to really dry out the skin. And once that was done, I actually located some good butcher twine. So I gave this a proper tie up, and then it was off to the fridge for an overnight rest so that skin will really dry out. Do you hear that? That is the beautiful sound of rendering pork fat. That's gonna be lard, all the extra fat that came off that cut. One of the best cooking fats to have in your arsenal, so nothing's wasted. And speaking of nothing being wasted, well, we've got extra herbs here, and I had a master plan. So we sprinkled these on the pork, but now I can easily turn these herbs, this lemon zest, into a quick little chimichurri, just a nice fresh sauce that goes on top. And all I need to do is grate up some garlic, cut that lemon that we already took the zest off of, and give it a little juicy juice, and then finally hit it with some olive oil, a little bit of salt and pepper, and shebang, you've got yourself a beautiful sauce to really complete this sandwich. Like any of the sandwiches in the sandwich series, the bread of course is vital, but when you're dealing with a 3-ingredient sandwich, well, the stakes are a little bit higher. So I thought long and hard about this sandwich roll, and I decided on a sourdough ciabatta because one, ciabatta is an Italian roll, which was perfectly for this Italian sandwich, and two, making this ciabatta sourdough I thought would add a nice hardiness compared to just using baker's yeast, which would be a little softer, and I thought the hardiness would really hold up to the fattiness of the pork. So I'm gonna start off by activating my sourdough starter. Now while the sourdough starter was activating, I worked on my dough, and this is a higher hydration type dough. So I added 4 cups of bread flour and 1 cup of whole wheat. Then I added 2.5 cups of water and gave that a mix until everything was incorporated. And I let this sit in autolyse for a few hours so the dough continues to hydrate and form more of those gluten bonds. Now once my starter was ready for action, I added about a cup of it along with 2 tablespoons of olive oil and a good bit of salt, and started folding that in to incorporate all of those ingredients together. And once it was incorporated, I took out the dough and gave it a few slap and folds and just let that rest. Now around every half hour, I checked the dough and I gave it a few quick folds, which is really gonna help continue to develop the gluten structure. And I did this around 3 times until the dough is looking really nice and smooth and supple. This dough is gonna ferment overnight, so I put it in a clear casserole dish so I could see the actual growth of the dough and placed it in the fridge for a long, slow proofing. Then I woke up super early in the morning like a good baker would, and it was time to bake some bread. I gotta say, I am very proud of how these sourdough ciabatta rolls came out. I recipe tested these once, they came out decent, but I improved, and this is just, I mean, that looks like a ciabatta roll right there. And then you add the sourdoughness and it's just hearty. It's still like nice and fluffy with the crunch on the outside. Perfect, I feel like, for just a whole mound of pork, but we don't have pork, so let's go roast a whole bunch of pork. So we're dialed in at just around 300. I'm trying to get anywhere from 275 to 300 and maintain that for 2 to 3 hours. It's been around 30 minutes and you can see the fat is just starting to render. So we're gonna slow cook this for that 2 to 3 hours. So once it's cooked through, I'm gonna use that burner to puff up this skin and get the crackling going. All right, it's been exactly 3 hours at 300 degrees. We're gonna take the temp of this baby All right, yeah, that's fine. We're aiming for anything above 160 before we start the next process, which is cranking this knob right here. Whoa, that's the rotisserie action. Okay, you see how half of that is puffed up? So the skin wasn't puffing up, and I realized all I had to do was just put it super close. Ow, ow, hot to film, hot to film. When you put it super close, I don't want to burn it, to the flame, that skin will puff up. It actually reminds me a lot of the first porchetta sandwich that I ever had, which was in Williamsburg at an outdoor fair, and they chopped it up just like this. They had a hearty roll just like this. Very, very similar. Italian sandwiches take a minute to really kick in because they're so simple. At first you're like, all right, I need a sauce, I need more flavor. But after a few bites, the refinement kicks in and you actually enjoy the simplicity, and that's what's happening right now. I can really hone in on every element of this sandwich and it's just incredible. The only critique I have of this is probably cooking it a little too long. Because I didn't figure out that skin technique until a little later on, I feel like I overcooked it slightly, and I would have loved that pork just a little bit more fatty. But damn, I'm excited to finish this and have porchetta sandwiches all week long. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you check out another episode of the sandwich series right here or right here, and I'll see you in the next video.